Good evening and welcome to Marketing to Your Customers' Two Brains. I'm Dante, and we're going to be going through a bit of a look behind the psychology of marketing and some of the information that's come out in the last 20 years that's really kind of flipped the whole marketing script on its head. It's flipped it around because some of the assumptions we made in the earlier days of advertising and marketing just might not be necessarily true. There's a few of you online tonight, so do feel free to pop your questions in either the Q&A or the chat. Doesn't matter where it is, I'll see it come up on the screen. Got a couple of screens here. And if there's something you don't understand, please just jump in and ask, and I'll be able to clarify that for you. This is live on Zoom. For those of you watching on YouTube, though, you can pop the questions in down below because we'll be answering those after. Give us about 24 hours to answer those. But for you guys on Zoom, hey, it's all automatic for you. As soon as you ask the question, I'll recognize it and see it, and we'll be able to answer it. Let's get the screen shared and get it all underway. First up, a quote from, of all people, Aristotle back in, gosh, this would have been around about maybe probably about 300 BC. And he said, the art of persuasion combines emotions delivered with facts. So this approach we're looking at is not necessarily something new. It's just taking the idea of persuasion and marrying it with marketing, and then realizing there's both an emotional aspect to it, which uses one part of your brain, and the factual aspect to it that uses another part of your brain. But how do we deal with that? How do we work with that in social media, in ads, all that sort of thing? Well, that's what we're going to look at. But first, we're going to take a look at the depths of the brain. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Digital Solutions Program from the Australian Government, a part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services, are bringing that to you for free. And I really enjoy doing these, so I really hope this program lasts for a lot longer, because it certainly is really helpful for small businesses. If you're going to watch this on YouTube, you can watch it via either the Business Station channel or my channel, Dante St. James. Just search for either of us, and this will be up a little later tonight in my channel, and probably late tomorrow in the Business Station one. What we're going to look at is what the two brain systems are. So you get an idea of a bit of the neurochemistry and the neuropsychology before we look into what we call neuromarketing, which is all about taking advantage of these things in what we do and how we present our products and services. We'll look at some examples of single brain marketing, and also examples where this whole two brain marketing thing just got nailed. So we'll look at those as real life examples as well. First up, though, a bit about me if you haven't met me. I'm a certified lead trainer with Meta, which is Facebook, and within Australia. I've got a whole lot of certifications with them and do a lot of training with them around the country. I've got the LinkedIn local Darwin chapter, which is I started up only in the last month, and it was really successful. My own business, Clickstarter, which is a training and digital marketing agency. I've also started up Startup Territory, which is a pre-accelerator program for new businesses over 8 weeks, doing a bit of an intensive how to get their businesses structured, ready for the success of developing that minimum viable product to get their businesses going, and then seeking funding for when they're ready to scale up. Working with Digital Springboard, which is a Google program, as well as through this Digital Solutions and the Entrepreneurship Facilitators program through Business Station as well in the Darwin region. So first up, those two brains we're talking about. Now, I probably should have chosen a better picture than this, because this particular picture is not the two brains we're talking about. The left and right hemisphere of the brain, often associated with either more creative on the right and less creative, more logical on the left, isn't actually what we're talking about. Those two hemispheres of the brain we're talking about are a lot of the higher functions and what we call the rational brain, which we're going to cover off very shortly. But that's actually not a really good representation of the two brains we're talking about. The two brains we're talking about is what we call the primal brain, which is the lower brain, often the hippocampus, the brain stem, the cerebellum. I'm really going through my old anatomy and physiology lessons now to try and pick all that out. And then that rational brain is what those hemispheres are that we see on that other picture. The primal brain and the rational brain developed very differently at very different times. And that lower brain, that primal brain, is more like what we see in brains of the lower animals, for instance, like we're talking about more like reptiles, less developed larger animals, certainly not a lot of mammals would tend to have the rational brain, but it doesn't do rational things. It's actually a very tiny part of what that primal brain is. So these are two very different parts of the brain with two very different purposes that work together. As modern humans, we have both of these in abundance. We've got, just as much in the primal brain as the rational brain, but we tend to focus when it comes to all of our marketing, all of our thought, all the way we react in life through our rational brain. And how this is going to relate to marketing is going to become really obvious soon as you start to begin to realize how people use these both parts of their brains to engage with decisions around shopping. Because we've always assumed that all the decisions we made are based on logic and reason up in that rational brain, the blue area. But the reality is the last 20 years of science and neuroscience particularly have shown us that it's not actually that. We're now learning that this brain, the lower brain or primal brain, or sometimes a reptile brain if it's called, is actually the decision maker that consults with the rational brain. Often we walk into situations where we've already made up our mind about someone or something or a product or a service or a potential partner if we're going on a date. And that when you really think about it, you sat down to have a date with someone and you kind of knew within the first few minutes that whether you wanted to be with them or not. Well, that's your primal brain making an instant snap decision. Now, right or wrong, in some cases you might go, God, if I only had trusted my initial instincts and judgment. All that instinct we're talking about lives in that primal brain. The rational brain is all about thinking, processing much bigger questions, being able to take input from the primal brain and do more with it. But it's not necessarily where our decisions for purchasing are made. And that's important to know when you're a business. To do a little bit of ancient brain biology, the brainstem or the lower brain, the primal brain, is about 500 million years old. This particular kind of brain developed in not just humans, but across a whole lot of animals back 500 million years ago. Now we're about 14 billion years old as a planet. So 500 million years is still like not long along the evolution path. But the upper brain that we work with, that rational brain that does all the thinking and the feeling and all the reading and the science and the maths and all that stuff, that's only about 3.4 million years old. That's not very old at all. In fact, out of all the animals that have developed, we have developed the biggest of those rational brain areas, the much more perceiving part rather than just taking in raw knowledge from elsewhere. Very, very different and very differently evolved as they came along. Now, the primal brain is very quick to make decisions, massively quick. It's just bang, it seems to know, it's intuitive, takes in the world around it and just goes, yep, I got the input, I know what I'm doing, yep, nah. But it's very limited in what it's capable of doing. You cannot make complex decisions about your life and about where you're going to go to school or who you're going to marry, all that, all based on the fast but limited attraction of the lower brain. The problem is, though, that the upper brain, the really smart part of us, the part where we make those more complex decisions, it's very slow to make those decisions, but it's really smart. It really knows how to sort things out rationally and logically, but it's so slow to make those decisions, which helps us in our survival, really, because we just made instinctual decisions all the time. Basically, smell a saber-toothed cat and run away from it very quickly. Well, that's in our fast, that gets us out of trouble immediately. It's all about survival, about thriving. But this slow but smart part of the brain, which is so clever in the way it's been able to reason things together and take together all the inputs and really take time to think things through, doesn't help with survival. It helps with thriving. It certainly helps with making things better, but it's not a great survival engine because it will sit there and go, so that looks like a saber-toothed cat. A saber-toothed cat has two very large sabers that help to puncture it and kill its prey and then eats them live on the spot. Saber-toothed cat, perhaps I should run away from that. Now, in the meantime, while you've gone through that thinking process, the thing has already torn you apart and the survival is not being protected. The survival brain is not the big part of your brain. It's not that big part that we do all our thinking with. It is that brainstem, that part that really is to do with lower thinking, with feeling and intuition and sensing danger and helping to promote instant acts that will help us to survive. But that lower brain is also very good at intuition, and it handles most of the stuff with the senses. It takes in that first bit of information from your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your every part of your nervous system, and helps you to make an immediate decision based upon that. We will see the color blue in nature and know that it's probably poisonous, so we won't go and eat that blue thing in nature. We didn't really know the difference between blueberries and strawberries a long time ago, but we would have assumed that blue was a danger color when it comes in nature. At the same time, we're taking a smell of smoke and we go, there's probably a chance that there's like other people nearby. And you smell the smell of cooking meat and you go, yep, there's definitely people nearby, because only people do that. So the basic intuition senses going through the red part of the brain, absolutely as part of that. And basic maths, and I'm talking about the kind of maths that sort of adds up, is there's two people over there. I'm only one person. I'm at a disadvantage. So rather than going, we're not talking about complex equations and trigonometry and Euclid and all that sort of thing. What we're talking about is just simply that, okay, our group of people is 20, that group of people is 100, therefore they outnumber us. That's a danger and a threat. But complex maths, predictions and risk assessment, and this is where it starts to come into the marketing area, where you start to, make complex decisions about the things you're going to buy. That's when you may go and look through the different specifications of cars that you might want to buy. Now, a car's a big investment. If you're going to spend $50,000 to $60,000 on a vehicle, you want to make sure you do a thorough risk assessment of what each of those things are. You don't want to be getting that car within 3 months, having to pay thousands to get it repaired, right? So you'll take everything into account you can possibly take and decide upon which car you're going to get. But I can bet you that you knew which car you wanted the minute you actually stepped into the yard or saw it on a magazine page and looked at it and went, oh, I'd like that car. And it doesn't matter all the risk assessments you make in the higher brain, you still want that particular kind of car. And I've got an example of that a little bit later for you, of a car that nobody needs, but I tell you what, most guys in this country seem to really want. It also, that lower brain, the red brain, is about short-term actions. It's about going, quickly do this, quickly survive, quickly ensure protection of your property and your family and your kids. Though most of that these days, as we are modern humans, is confirmed by the blue brain, by the rational and thinking brain. So you can see that there's this constant interchange through them. You may make an instinctual decision to do something quickly, but then once it runs through the slower brain, it says, yes, that looks like there's a whole lot of people up there, but they're all yelling your name and they've got big smiles on their faces. So those 100 people against just the 20 of you in your village, they actually like you. They're your friends. They're your extended family. Oh, don't run away. Actually now interact with them. And this is where you get a very big difference in how these two brains operate. One is very bang, makes a decision on the spot. The other one is going to consider extra things that the lower brain has not taken into account. And that includes things like facial emotions, facial recognition, being able to tell what the intentions are of other people through observing their behavior, rather than just going, that's a danger, that's a whole lot of people. And of course, that's lower brain is all about the feeling and the sensing. It's where our emotions really spark up, but we can override those by thinking, by reading, by writing, by learning more about the environment around us and the world around us, rather than just taking that stimulus in straight away and just going quick run or quick attack, or that fight or flight thing all happens in that lower brain. So there's a lot of other interactions, of course, with neurochemicals, peptides and hormones, and the release of adrenaline into the system and what that does to the brain as well. So many different interactions that happen. But what we're talking about more here is that decision-making process that happens when someone is looking at your product or your services, and they're looking at the possibility of buying something from you or not buying something for you or choosing someone else. This is where life gets more complex than just simply making a decision. It's where there's a whole lot of inputs that go with that decision as well. The instinctive and emotional brain, that's the lower brain. The considering and logical brain, that's the upper brain. And funnily enough, the red brain only looks at now. It doesn't know about the past. It doesn't know about the future. It only knows what it's taking in from its environment right now, is whether to fight, flight, or freeze. And that's just those three things it wants to do. It either wants to fight for what it's got, it either wants to run away to protect itself, or it goes, I'm just going to freeze because I don't quite know what to do. Yet our big brain, the big part, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, that takes in both the past and the future, as well as the present. It considers the possibilities of the future. It looks at the learnings from the past rather than just reacting from the present. So that can tell you a lot about someone making a decision to buy your products or services. They don't just look at what they immediately want, but they'll pass it through a filter of past and present and future in order to make that decision. But the reality is, we don't really do a lot of that when we're shopping. A lot of the shopping we're doing is very, very subconscious. It's almost automatic. It's done in that red part of the brain, that bit that's mostly out of our control, that bit which is not really, we don't even know why we make the decisions we do when we make them very suddenly then. And we quite often do that in things like when we're drunk. If someone's drunk, they'll make a lot of decisions from that very reptilian part of the brain, which is why a lot of men get very punchy when they get on the rums, or they might get very, making very, very sudden, very dangerous decisions because they've reverted out of that smart brain and into the, not the dumb brain, but the instant brain that doesn't have a lot of control mechanisms in it. The stuff that goes on in our very smart brain, the rational brain, is very much under our control. We can learn new things and add things to our skills, but we don't necessarily make all the right decisions in the right order when we're using these parts of our brains. So how are these two brains related to marketing? How do we take all that information about, okay, well, we get that there's a very old reptilian brain that acts in the moment, and then there's this one considering and rational brain that takes a bit more information from around it to make more logical and rational decisions. But how do they relate to marketing? Well, consider this idea of neuromarketing. Neuromarketing is a very relatively new idea. It's about 20 years old. It's about, gosh, it would have been almost exactly 20 years old, 20 years ago. So 2002, 2003, when the whole neuromarketing movement started. And it suggests that understanding and predicting consumer behavior can't just be based on what we think we know. It also has to include a bit of an understanding of neuroscience and the way that the brain works and the way that decisions are made, and that complex interplay between all the input that they're getting from your advertising and from everyone else's advertising, and what happens when they make that decision. We like to think we're very rational beings. We like to think we take all the pros and cons and line them up and then make the decision based on that. But the reality is sometimes we just like that car because it's pretty. Same can be said about our choice of partners. Sometimes we just like him because he's bloody good looking, or she's really, really pretty, rather than necessarily taking in the, are we compatible? Are we going to test that? This whole neuromarketing thing came out in 2003 based upon a small study that put Pepsi and Coke together. Now, we remember the Pepsi challenge has been going on a very long time, since about the 1970s, I think, where people would line up and they'd be on a beach or some public place and they'd do a blind test of whether they tasted Pepsi or Coke, and they'd go, oh yeah, well, this is the one I prefer. And in those Pepsi challenges, just about every time, people were choosing Pepsi. I'm just drinking some Pepsi Max myself right now. And they would choose whichever one they liked the most. Now, there was this interesting part of this study was that when people knew they were drinking Coke, they preferred Coke. But when they didn't know what was actually in the glass, they preferred Pepsi. So when they didn't know what it was, Pepsi was the winner. When they did know which each one was, then Coke was the winner. Even when Pepsi was put in a Coke can, they drink from the Coke can and go, we prefer Coke, not knowing that it actually had been swapped over. That's because the instant reaction they were getting was from that lower brain, was saying, well, it's safe to drink something that's familiar because it's Coca-Cola. I trust it. I know it. Therefore, I'm used to it. Therefore, I'm just going to drink it. And that's the one I prefer. But their body was, when they would take that away and take the labeling away, they'd try Pepsi. And immediately, because Pepsi is sweeter and contains just slightly higher amount of sugar in it, it actually lit up a part of the brain that had to do with very primal survival instincts. So the higher sugar content, the better for you to survive, so that you've got much more energy to be able to work with as you're out there hunting mammoths and trying to escape saber-toothed tigers. So both had a very different reaction in the lower brain. And when you try to tell someone that, oh no, you were actually drinking Pepsi right then instead of Coke, they would have what is called a cognitive dissonance. They wouldn't be able to kind of cope with that. What this means is essentially that despite preferring Pepsi on taste, participants would prefer Coca-Cola when they knew it was Coca-Cola, which is crazy because they only picked it when they knew it was Coke. Doesn't mean that Coke or Pepsi is any better than each other, but what it does say is that we make decisions on very complex inputs that then get sort of set in place that make us go, well, I do like Coke better because I know the Coke brand. I've seen it more often and it feels like it's something I trust. We grew up with Coke. We grew up with Coke in my household too. But for some reason along the line, I chose Pepsi for probably reasons that were more up in my higher brain than my lower brain, which is because I wanted to be a rebel in my own household. And the way to express my rebellion was to let everyone know that I didn't like Coke as much as I like Pepsi. What we need to understand then is the brain uses a lot of energy. We make the decision based upon the less energy path. We want to do the most efficient thing as we possibly can. So what will happen if we taste Pepsi? We go, yes, that's sweet, and that's going to give me more energy, therefore I choose that. Simple, clean, very sudden decision. The same thing happens with Coke. I look at it and go, my survival is not at stake if I drink this because I know it and I'm familiar with it and it feels safe. I will drink Coke and prefer that. So we take the lowest energy path to make the fastest decision we can, and hoping that that energy is conserved enough so we can live another day and make more decisions and use our brain. That brain uses a lot of energy, much, much more energy than its size. The brain is only like 2% of the body's mass, but uses 20% of the body's energy. It is it's like the dryer in your house or the air conditioner in your house. It may be just this one piece of technology that sits in one corner of your house, but by gosh, when you turn it on, it uses all the power. So 20% of your body's use, despite only being 2% of the body's mass. It's a very high energy hog. So when we're using that energy, we tend to make decisions based upon survival. And the survival says, okay, we want to take in a lot of energy and we want to save energy when we're making decisions. It's why some people just hate making decisions and some people are very good at it. Some of us have just moved past that energy conservation and moved into, I guess, a habit of making decisions, but we still make the easiest decisions possible. We don't want to sit there and obsess about decisions unless there's something neurologically wrong with us or there's a psychiatric problem that may stop us from doing that, where we become quite neurotic about those decisions. Now, of all that energy that goes into the brain, so 20% of all the energy that goes in, the 2% of the body mass, 90% of that energy that goes into the brain is just there to keep us alive and safe. So that's keeping us breathing, keeping our nervous system working, taking all the feedback in, making sure their circadian rhythms work so that we can sleep and wake up, and we do it with the sunset and the sunrise, and we make sure that that we sleep, but we're in enough of a state that if danger happens, we can wake up quickly and get ourselves out of that danger. That's just the stuff that keeps us alive. That's all happening in the lower brain. All the stuff that we don't make a decision on, have no control of, is taking 90% of the energy. So you can imagine with only 10% of that energy left, our thinking needs to be very, very efficient, because only 10% of that total energy is used to think and learn and be conscious and read and write and do maths and science and all those things that we as humans are known for and very good at, being very smart with our big brains. But only 10% of the energy in the brain goes towards that stuff. This is somehow like when you heard that sort of old idea that we only use 10% of our brain. That's actually not true. We actually use 100% of our brain, but we only use 10% of the energy that's allocated to the brain for the big things like thinking and learning. And some people might think, oh, well, I'm an academic, I definitely burn more energy of that. But it's still, there's no real difference between any one person depending on the behavior. You don't have control over this. So given that you need to save that, you need to make very quick decisions based upon 4 key areas. You want to avoid pain. You want to survive. You want to protect what's yours, including family and kids and progeny. And you need to do things quickly. So the vast majority of decisions are made to stop you from feeling pain, to make sure you survive to see another day, to protect what's yours, and to do something quickly, because if you don't make a decision quickly, that saber-toothed cat is going to come and plunge its saber teeth into you. That's the kind of thinking that goes on when decisions are made very quickly. None of these things are made in the smart, rational brain. They're all made from the reptilian brain that makes quick decisions and very sense-based decisions, all the things that take in inputs like that. Now, this super fast decision-making prefers, now this is where we hit the marketing bit. It prefers video over photos and photos over text. Now, video is very important to marketing. We know that it's the highest performing kind of post or ad you can put onto social media. We know that video is something which we learn far better from than text on a page. And it's simply because video is the thing that closest resembles an environment where we take in lots of information. When you read words on a page, you're just taking in, a little bit of data. And you can have to think about each one of those. You have to read it. Often you're reading it in your head to understand it, interpret it, comprehend it, know what to do with it. Whereas a video is giving you all that information for free. It's saying, here's the sights, here's the sounds, here's the colors, here's the shapes, here's the forest with all the darkness in it, here's the beach with all the brightness in it. So you can see what's going on and make really, really simple decisions based on all of the inputs you're getting. Which is also why photos are better than text, because photos give you a lot of context. Like we say, a picture tells 1,000 words. A video tells 1,000,000. These all are the kind of like the order in which we prefer to receive information online. Video first, photos second, text third. Now, often what we're doing online is a mixture of all those things. It could be video with text, photos with an overlay or a caption. But we do prefer to take in video over photos and photos over text because it helps us to make decisions faster. We don't spend as much energy to comprehend what's going on in the video because the video is telling us what it's in. It's telling us what the environment looks like. It's telling us what the product is and how it works. Text could take us 20 pages to deliver that same amount of information that's in the video. And an example would be the more modern Coca-Cola ads, which are very emotional, very emotive, relatable, people in love, people in enjoyment, happiness, good times, wealth, prosperity, often young and beautiful, and the simple message of taste the feeling with the Coca-Cola logo. Rather than what we used to start off with Coca-Cola, which looked a bit more like this. A lot of words, because what we're trying to do, instead of getting people to feel the Coke, we were trying to convince them based upon the facts why they should drink Coke, without telling them that back in those days it may have had cocaine in it, but it would be a delightful, palatable, healthful beverage. For men, it's ideal for business and professional men, students and women and athletes. For women, it's great for when you're thirsty and weary and despondent. Isn't that crazy? The men are all professionals and the women are just thirsty, weary and despondent. We've certainly come a long way in advertising. Sometimes we haven't come far enough. But there's a vast difference between the decisions we make based upon this, which immediately tell us about comfort, familiarity, colors that mean something to us, and happiness and fulfillment, than this, which is taking a lot of thought. We have to think about this. We have to consider this. We have to go, oh, it's 5 cents at fountains and it's 5 cents in bottles. Will I get it from a fountain or will I get it from a bottle? I've got to cut it out across the lines with which to get, so it's a voucher. So I've got to do something with this. And is it me? It's palatable and healthful. Yeah, I'll go and try it. Let's go and give that. There's a lot of thought, a lot of calories that have to go into place for you to understand what's going on there. Particularly when you look at this back in the 1800s, this was a lot of information to take in. Remember, in the 1800s, the average person took in less information than we take in probably 5 minutes in a whole day. So they would take in that much information and they'd have to deal with it. And that would be actually a hard thing for them to do. And so they'd have to, because there wasn't much advertising around, they'd have to take time to look at these things and take time to interpret and comprehend what's going on in there. Now that we're a lot more sophisticated with our understanding of things, we know that it just takes this to remind us of that great feeling of Coke, the good times we've had when Coke was a part of it, and we associate Coke with pleasure, even though it's sugar water and no one should be drinking it. Essentially, we are not thinking machines that happen to have feelings. We are feeling machines that happen to think. And that's from Antonio Damasio, the father of neuroscience. And back in 2003, he was part of that study that was doing the Pepsi and Coke challenge. So if Pepsi and Coke challenge wasn't just an ad campaign, there was actually a scientific neuroscience basis to it with which it was being discovered. Why do people make the choices that they happen to make? Which brings us to emotion and decision making and how they pave into it. So we say before, we saw that I've got to go backwards. Sorry, I've just gone ahead. The Pepsi and Coke challenge, we saw that. We know that which parts of the brain were triggered on different things. That there was a part of the lower brainstem was triggered when Pepsi was drunk, but when Coke was drunk and they knew it was Coke that was being drunk, then the higher brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is the front area of the brain in the blue area, that was triggered and lit up in these scientific experiments. So they know now what the difference is. We know that participants chose Pepsi based on taste, which is the decision based upon the primal brain. So taste said, this is sweet, this is sugary, we need more of this because this will give us energy so we can run away from the saber-toothed cats and hunt down the woolly mammoths. But Coke was chosen based on familiarity, which is also a decision based upon the primal brain. So if we're making both of these decisions from the primal brain, it goes to tell you that we can have some kind of control over decisions that people make based upon appealing to the primal brain. It seems to be where most of these decisions are being made, and that's all due to emotion. Neither of the decisions that were made were based upon any sort of logic of thinking through. We can make it some logic and say, oh, well, the reason why they chose it was because it was more full of energy and it had more sugar in it. So therefore, they were instantly wanting to protect themselves and have more energy to run away from the nasty things of the world. But we actually don't know that. All we really know is that they chose it because they chose it. We've used our higher brain to justify that decision, but neither of those decisions were based upon any sort of deep thinking. They just like what they like. It's like attraction. We like what we like and we don't like what we don't like, and we have very little control over that. So if we've got no control over it, then why is it so easy to trick this part of us? How emotion and marketing work together to get someone to do the thing you want them to do. Now, we're not talking about manipulation here, because ultimately the higher brain will override any sort of manipulation. The minute that someone knows they're being manipulated, they'll turn that around and then they'll get out of their lower brain and into their higher brain. The rational and calm and reasonable decision-making brain will override the primal brain if you try to rip people off. If they can sense that you're actually not who you say you are and you don't have their interests at heart. So how does it all work together? You've got to have an understanding, I suppose, of the 8 basic emotions. Now, there's emotion wheels you can get online, which have many, many, many more of these, but the 8 basic ones are joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. They all have their own role to play in our lives. They all help us to make decisions about what we're doing, and they are all triggered by the lower brain. So we will see something presented to us as a product and we'll feel some joy about it, or we'll instantly trust it, like people do with the can of Coke. They see the Coke, they drink the Coke. Yes, that's my favorite. I don't care whether the other one is saying in science that it's more popular. I trust this one, therefore I'm going to choose it. Fear is a great motivator as well. The fear of loss particularly is a very strong emotion in marketing. Surprise can be great because it's like you've taken all the assumptions you normally hold and something's come through and you go, oh, never expected that to be available. Never expected Disney on Ice to come to Dubbo, for instance, and never had and probably never will. Sadness, people will do things based upon sadness, and sadness can be triggered by marketing material. I've cried at ads, particularly Thai ads. Thailand makes the most emotion-filled ads. They're gorgeous, beautiful stories that last for about 2 minutes. I don't know how they got time for those between TV show breaks, but they're amazing. They'll make you cry. Then there's also disgust. Sometimes disgust is a great marketing tool that you want to provoke because you want someone to feel disgust about a competitor's product or disgust about what actually happens. So for instance, PETA and the vegan movement are very good at doing this. They get people very, very interested in their way of life and their way of eating because they make it so that they show us, you know, the often disgusting and the dark side of where we get our meat from, where we get our eggs from, where our dairy comes from. And we immediately are disgusted with it. So we make an instant decision, oh, I'm not going to have that, until the higher brain takes over and says, well, you know, that's great, you can do all that, but then, you know, you've got to change all these things in your life to fit that in. You have to throw everything out of your cupboards. And then the higher brain takes over and justifies us back out of becoming vegans, and we stay on our carnivore path. Anger as well, anticipation, every one of these emotions can be triggered within that lower brain. And when they're triggered within that lower brain, decisions get made immediately. So someone within a minute of seeing your product or hearing about your product or service or being presented something will feel these things. But they tend to feel them not just because they saw the product, but because of the way you've packaged it, the colors of it, the way you may have presented it in your ads, the things you may have said. Sometimes trust can be earned immediately. We say, oh, I don't trust anybody. Everyone has to earn their trust with me. Honestly, when it comes to products and services, we tend to trust almost instantly because it's delivered in a way that makes us feel like we can relate to the person presenting it. So I can do this. Like there's an implicit trust you have in me that I've gone and done my research in this. You don't know that I've gone and done my research. You don't know that I also happen to be a psychiatric registrar before I became a technology person. You don't know that I went and studied, psychiatry and very deep clinical psychology way before I got involved in technology. You don't know all this. You're just implicitly trusting that I kind of know what I'm talking about and I'm worth listening to. Just because I made it really easy for you to consume this. I've welcomed you in. I've got a process on my webinars that allows you to, first of all, get into your creative brain space so you'll learn more, which is why I put a quote at the beginning of things. It switches off the rest of your day and switches on your brain towards what you're doing. I take you through a process that makes it so much easier for me to teach you something. But for you, it's just like, oh no, you trust me. Or you're surprised by a fact. Or you may be having anticipation for this because you've watched a webinar before. There's always a way that people connect with other people that can elicit any of these emotional responses. What we do to make better marketing, to do better advertising, to make better Facebook posts, to do better TikTok videos, and to write better blogs on our websites is that we start with an emotional connection with someone, because it helps them to skip the logic and get a decision straight away. Emotions help to calm a very wary mind, a mind that's looking for reassurance to make sure they're safe, their family is safe, that they're going to survive the next day, they're going to save calories when it comes to making decisions. All starts with that emotional connection. When you trust someone, you skip the logic, which is why so many people get ripped off by family and friends who they start with an emotional connection of, I feel close to you. I've known you for 25 years. You're one of the closest people in my life. And you just stole $250,000 off me without me even suspecting you might do it. That's because we can start with that emotion and we skip that logic. It's like we go into dumb brain. When we have emotional connection, we go to dumb brain and we get the desired decision. Now, we don't want to be manipulating people by pretending to be their best friend in the world. But what we can do is help them to get past the barriers that are going to stop them from considering and buying our products and services and booking our time. If we start off with some kind of thing that makes them feel comfortable with us, or makes them feel comfortable with our brand or with our product, that reassures them without them realizing that they had a whole bunch of danger signals going off in their heads because it was something new they were doing. That emotional connection then explains why this is one of Australia's most desired vehicles by men, the Ford Ranger Raptor. So many men want this car. I cannot believe how many of my friends want it. Even I want it. I would love to have one of these. Now, there's no logical reason for me to have this car. There's no logical reason. I have no need for it. I have absolutely zero business case to have this car. There's no practical reason for me to own this vehicle. I don't four-wheel drive. I don't live in a rural area. I don't drive in mud every weekend. I don't drive on sand dunes. I do not need a car of this. Yet I've already made up my mind that if I had the money, I'd probably buy it. This is the car I'd go for, the Ranger Raptor. I don't know why. It's probably a piece of crap. I have no idea, but I want it because look at it. It's got everything that I want. It elicits emotional response in me because it's Ford, and Ford's like the original, car company of Henry Ford, and it's a trust. It's a big American brand. It's tough looking. Look at it. It looks tough. It's named after the Velociraptor. They're probably actually named after a bird raptor, but it could be the Velociraptor, the sneakiest, nastiest, and most aggressive of all the dinosaurs, and hunts in packs. You can imagine this raptor here hunting in packs on sand dunes, driving around looking for a nice place to have a picnic. These are all the things that are going on in my head before I land on the fact that I'd love a Ranger Raptor. I'd love one of them, preferably in blue. I think blue would be amazing. It's such a great color, but I don't need it. There's no reason for me to have it. There's no logical reason for me to have it, but something in my primal brain has already stuck me with this. I have not even considered looking at Hiluxes. I haven't considered looking at Colorados or LDVs or Great Wall or whatever the other brands of these, or Subarus, because at first sight, when I saw the name of it, I saw the shape of it, I saw the design of it, and I did all that sort of internal reaction, I knew I wanted one. And I've never wanted another ute at all. I just want that one. That's the only one I want. And I have no logical reason why. Don't worry, girls, because we know that this kind of thing does the same thing. This $12,000 Novita diamond ring is desired. It's actually the #1 diamond ring desired by women around Australia. It's clean lines, that gigantic, multifaceted, beautiful white diamond on top is the most desired engagement ring by women in Australia. Now, there is no logical reason to own this ring. There is no practical reason to have to own this ring. Yet a lot of women have already seen this ring and made up their mind that they must have one. And if they really could have it, oh my goodness, it'd be so nice to have one. So what's at play here? Is it some sort of deep thought pattern? No. A primal decision was made at the instant of seeing this. It's so beautifully presented, and it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous, an incredibly lustrous and bright, brilliant diamond. But why do women desire that ring above all else? Well, #1 is the price. It's $12,000. If he buys you a $12,000 ring, he must really love you, unless he's a billionaire and it doesn't really matter. It's because, we like to be able to show our engagement ring to our friends and say, hey, look at my ring, and it's bigger than their rings. That status symbol is in there. That's a very primal thing. Why do we want to be status? Because status means power. Power means food. Food means energy. Energy means you're going to live another day longer than anyone else around you. And we've also been trained for nearly 100 years now by De Beers Diamonds that a month's salary is what buys a diamond. So at some point they decided, no one else decided, this is not a rule in life. This was a marketing decision made by De Beers that said the month's salary that lasts forever. Now that's grown lately to 2 months salary. We've taken it up a bit now because apparently 1 month's salary is not enough for a diamond ring. It has to be 2 months salary now. And all De Beers and other diamond merchants collateral now has included that to be, now it's 2 months salary to buy a ring. No logical reason, but we believe it. We trust that message and we'll act on it. And every year, you see people getting married and engaged and spending way too much. Nobody needs a $150,000 wedding. But now the average wedding in Australia is around about $80,000. Why? No need for it. No evolutionary, no truly logical or real need to have that thing, but we have it anyway, because at some point, someone saw a photo in a wedding magazine and just instantly went, that's my wedding. That's the wedding I want to have. And so they got stuck with it. They couldn't move past it. And then that cognitive dissonance that happens where they can't not have that wedding. Otherwise, any other wedding will feel cheap and nasty and just not what their dream was. This is what goes on in marketing, especially in online marketing, because we're bombarded with so many messages every day. We're bombarded with so many of them that it then makes it go, well, how do we find our place in this? How do we, I hate saying take advantage of this little hack in the human brain, but it's more like it's already been done. Everybody else is already using these techniques to get your customer to spend with them. So how do we then take this and apply it to our customers to buy from us instead of from other places? How do we apply this to your business? So let's just say you're selling a skincare regime, aloe hydrating hand cream. Now, single brain marketing would list features and benefits. So it'd say the feature is that it's 100% organic. There's 120 applications of it for your hands. You'll have softer hands. It's in a recyclable package. These are all really good things, but none of them are setting you on fire and going, ooh, I must have it. But when that's presented in the fact that it's 100% organic because your body is a temple and you should be looking after it and not spreading chemicals on yourself, the primal brain is engaged. I don't want to spread chemicals on myself. That might endanger my survival. There's 120 applications, which means you've got 4 months of hand bliss. Sounds much nicer than 120 applications. There's softer hands, but that's not enough on its own because we want hands that he'll want to hold. That goes into the protective who we got, the wanting to be protected by the protector of the family. And the recyclable package on its own means nothing, but saving the earth one soft hand at a time just ties into that primal thing. Yes, of course I want to save the earth because my kids need to live in this planet when I'm gone and they need to have an earth they can live on. So the two brain marketing says, yes, 100% organic's a great thing, but it also ties it into an emotion, the emotion and that feeling that your body's a temple, that 120 applications, which is a very good fact, but it also leads to 4 months of hand bliss. Softer hands that he'll want to hold. Recyclable package that saves the earth one soft hand at a time. So you're appealing to one side of it. You may be starting off with a fact, but what really works the most is when you start off with an emotion, with a feeling. Your body is your temple. So enjoy this 100% organic product. 4 months of bliss of hands. That's 120 applications of our hand cream. For hands they want to hold because they're so soft, saving the earth one soft hand at a time with our recyclable packaging. So you start off, even the story just flows much nicer when you start off with the emotional feel, start off with the benefits, start off with the thing that's appealing to their lower brain, their survival brain. And then you go on with the facts that help to convince them. Because remember, as we go through that decision-making process, we land on the lower brain and then we go, or the primal brain, and then it goes up to the higher brain or the rational brain to make a decision through that filter. This, what it does, it doesn't just try to rush through and manipulate someone. It actually says, well, here is this thing that's going to appeal to your primal brain. So you get that thinking in place that then goes up and the higher one says, oh, the body is your temple. That's because it's 100% organic, and organic's a good thing. Yeah. Organics is like not chemicals. It's natural. We start to do the justifications to back up what the emotion is. Remember, this is already happening with people. So it's not like you need to manipulate them into this. This is already going on inside their heads. So this could be like a life coach, for instance, or a health coach or a nutrition coach, or someone who's going to help you to feel better and live a better life, right? So the single brain marketing of this would talk to you about things like empowering yourself and unlocking your potential and taking control and learning what motivates you. But the two brain marketing method will look at that and go, you can be more. You can empower yourself. Those dreams are still alive in you from when you were a kid. So why don't you unlock your potential? You feel a lack of control right now. So take control. You don't know who you are. So come and learn what motivates you. So I've taken this two brain side of it, the emotional side of it, and applied it to the facts on the left. And the reason why I've got it left and right is often that left brain is the brain that's the most logical. The right brain is the dreamy, emotional, creative side of the brain. So you can see the potential in here. Rather than just listing a bunch of features and benefits, tie it into a feeling. Toyota took that so seriously that they actually made it part of their slogan. They just said, oh, what a feeling. Back in the 80s, I think, or even the 90s, Coca-Cola had, you can't beat the feeling. So that feeling thing has been known for a long time to be what really does motivate behavioral change. If you want someone to buy your particular product rather than someone else's, you have to appeal to their heart before you can appeal to their head. Their head may make the ultimate decision, but their heart's locked onto that decision, has already said, okay, well, I want it. Now, head, give me the information I need to justify the decision I want to make. Oh, I don't want to go to Bali this year. I want to go to Mongolia. Why do I want to go to Mongolia? Because it's going to challenge me and grow me as a person. And it's going to be less, packaged and more survival. And so I'll take all these steps to try and justify what I want to do, this much more expensive, much less logical kind of vacation. And that happens in everything we do. from picking a hand cream to picking a life coach to picking a holiday. So some examples I'm giving here in a few fictitious ones, examples of two-brain marketing on social media and how that may look. So our first example will be this one I picked out from ClickCease. This ClickCease is about it's a company that basically has a product that helps you to stop wasting money on bots clicking on your ads and taking all your money on Google. Now this came through to me because obviously I work with a Google platform and I'm a digital marketer myself. So my primal brain is saying all these bots clicking on there, that's a threat to my survival. My rational brain just says, well, oh, well, a free checkup seems like a good idea. This actually kind of nails that whole emotion to rational action flow. It starts off, the first thing you look at is the ad, is the creative, where you got bots clicking all over the ads. Bots are clicking on your ads. Oh my God, threat to my survival. Then I go down the bottom, I see, oh, there's a free free click fraud checkup. Oh, I can do something about it. I feel better. My rational brain says, okay, we can do something about this. Let's go and do that checkup. Let's go and see if people are stealing our Google money. One that's not so good is this one from Business Blueprint. The primal brain really sees nothing at all except a lot of blue and a lot of people with their hands up and a guy on stage. It seems like it seems very cultish, to be honest. My primal brain actually tells me to avoid at all costs because it looks like a network marketing cult. But my rational brain may say, actually, this maybe seems like something I'd want, but I'm so turned off by it. Like I've gone straight into disgust. So we maybe look at the emotion wheel and disgust. I'm so disgusted by the photo, by the fact that it was like, oh, that looks so cultish, that my rational brain hasn't even got a chance to go to maybe this is something I'd want. So it failed on the first pass, which was the primal brain. And now it's trying to appeal to your rational brain. And this is why this ad campaign won't work that well, because it's not making you scared enough. It's not making you have desire enough. It's just saying, this sounds like it might be something I want, maybe. Prime 7, which is regional Queensland's Channel 7 affiliate, typically bad. Like most TV stations are so bad at actually presenting their products for you to buy, because they're assuming, number one, that you have $1,000 to spend on an advertising campaign, saying it's a game changer and you can buy TV and ad production online in minutes. The primal brain of mine is saying nothing at all. There's nothing at risk here. It's very easy for me to ignore this because my rational brain may say it might be good for my business, but there's nothing in the primal brain that's been emotionally triggered. I'm not emotionally triggered by anything. It's just such a bland ad that's saying really nothing at all that really makes me feel like my business is in danger. They could start off with the primal brain saying, digital advertising is dropping and it's getting harder and harder to measure. Well, that triggers my survival of my business in my head. So I go, let me read more. And I go, maybe this is worth considering. But these guys have gone straight for the facts and have completely ignored the emotions altogether. These guys, though, BetterHelp is a online therapy tool, and these guys have got it spot on. The primal brain looks at the danger, the angry person who gets better. The primal brain says, I want to feel better. Survival means I want to feel better. The rational brain just then kicks in and says, this might be a rational, good idea. This might be a good thing to do. But what it had to do is appeal to my primal brain first, give me an emotional response, seeing someone who's angry and worked up and just getting a bit better because they're able to talk with someone. And I go, oh, maybe that's something I need to do. Maybe that's something I can consider. So where you can see that difference, where these guys get a response from you that makes you want to learn more. These guys, in my case, it was a feeling of disgust because all I could see was it was a church cult. But for others, it might seem like, oh, it looks like a really fun time. So this one's a bit of a so-so. You may respond differently to this one than my brain did. My brain saw nothing in this, but went, it might be a good idea. I don't know. Bleh. But this grabbed me because it said, yeah, I have those times I'm angry too. I can relate to that. And I do actually feel better when I talk to someone. So imagine if I had someone who I could talk to about my problems, so I didn't take the anger in my day. That seems like a really good thing to do, and I get a better life out of it. So you can see in those 4 examples how the primal brain can be triggered, how it's backed up by a decision made in the rational brain, how the primal brain can be triggered to a negative, and then you don't really want to know about what this is. how the primal brain can be just completely ignored. So you'd ignore that ad. You just walk past it because it means nothing to you. And then how the primal brain can be triggered, making you want to take some action, making you want to click on that learn more button. This one's great. The primal brain doesn't really do anything at all, but that's probably because I don't have kids. But if I had kids, this primal brain would go, this would help me to make my kids better. My kids would enjoy this more. And you'd immediately go into thoughts of your kids, and you think of your kids and you think of protection. You think of bringing them up to be happy and healthy and good citizens when they get older. And if Disney on Ice with their favorite Disney stars from Moana, Coco, Frozen and more live on the ice in Brisbane, that might be a great way to achieve that. For me, the primal brain completely ignored because it was irrelevant to me. It didn't talk to my life. But you're a mum or a dad that could be talking to your life very closely, so that your primal brain reaction would be completely different than mine. So it's important to know who your customer is and what actually would attract them. So it gets you thinking, doesn't it? How can you, number one, know who your customer is and then know how to reach them? What are the emotional triggers that would get them to notice you first, enough to then pass on that initial interest to their rational brain, so that then they will do the selling inside their own head for what you're doing. So I could look at that and go, oh, do I really need to go a Moana Disney on Ice experience? And I go, oh, the kids would probably like it. Actually, it'd be a great way. But that's like about half a day. We can make a day of it. They really enjoy that. And then, that's only really half a day of me taking time off work while the school holiday. And you start doing that justification process. You start selling it to yourself. You're no longer selling it to them. They're selling it to themselves, because they've passed it on to the rational brain to rationalize that decision that their primal brain already wants. So once you understand that, suddenly you go, I now know how I need to do. What I need to do, I need to start with an emotional trigger in my ads, or my social media posts, or my blogs, and then explain the features with some benefits, explaining, this thing that's 100% organic and what that actually means, why that's a good thing. And then finally, finish off with that next step to take, which is often called a call to action. So you start with the emotional trigger, then explain the features and benefits, or the facts, and you finish off with an action that they can take. Now, there's more finer points, like a really good copywriter does this very well. They'll start with the emotional trigger and tie it to the features and benefits, and coming smoothly out of those features and benefits with another emotional trigger that will help you to then take that next step as a consumer. So copywriting is not what we're here to learn today. It's really to learn how you can use these neuroscience principles when it comes to everything you do on social media, everything you do on your website, even down to the kind of packaging you have on your product. So what does it all mean? It means that when you say you want to sell this nutrient water, which is all about starting with something relatable in the middle there, in the creative bit. Something relatable, such as life is busy. Well, my life's busy. I'm pretty sure your life's busy too. So we put what you need in this bottle. So we've got an emotional connection of life is busy. I can relate to that. And I'm probably going to be too busy to then have the facts of wanting to get the right nutrition. I don't have the time to properly care for myself. So relax. These guys got me covered with my vitamin A, B, C, D, and more. And then I finish with the next step forward, which is I can order these online with free delivery nationwide. So they've made it really easy for me to step forward. Emotional trigger, then the facts, then finally the call to action at the bottom. That's basically what a social media post or an ad or a piece of, I don't know, maybe a blog, any of those things would be for any small business. And that's just products. That's not necessarily even services. Another product could be, start with something relatable to form an emotional connection. Two cute bubbers. Nothing more emotionally able to be connected than that. Then we add some reasonable facts. But what you'll notice here is I continue the emotion. Aren't these two gorgeous in their neutrals? Then I went to the facts. Mix and match tops and bottoms for toddlers are now in stock from just $5 each. And finally finishing with the next step forward, which is order online with free delivery nationwide. Start with the emotional, then ease into the reasonable facts that help you to justify why you want to buy those for your kids. Finally end with the way that they can do it through a call to action. Makes sense, right? So how would you like to learn more about that with a guide? You can do it through the Digital Solutions program. here's the pitch. 3 hours one-to-one. That's 3 to 1 hour with myself or someone like me. There's plenty of us who are really, really big in marketing in Business Station and through the digital solutions program. Then you've got all the access you want to these webinars and workshops to your heart's content. 44 bucks. 44 bucks. That's it. No more to pay. That's it. businessstation.com.au is where you go. Feel free though to reach out directly to me as well if you'd like to talk about any of these things or have a chat or ask me a question. My email address is on screen. My LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, just look for my name. It's a weird one. You might have trouble finding it. That's the problem with that. You know, I've grown up in the 80s with that name. It was a whole lot of fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your businesses to work on your businesses and for listening to me rabbit on for the last hour. I'm going to go home and dye my beard because the grays are starting to come through and have a big rest because I'm moving house this week. So thank you. Have a great night. And I hope to see you again in the next one of these videos. Hope you enjoyed it.